It's the Andy Thompson Show on ESPN 97.7.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
Oh, wow.
Not so fast, midget.
You are looking live at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California.
Tailgate Tour with Mr. Poppi on the Andy Thompson Show.
Hey, buddy. Welcome back. Thanks for being with us. Tailgate Tour is brought to you by Flynn Companies. Flynn Roofing has helped build southern Utah, including Utah Tech, SUU, all these commercial buildings going up. Flynn Roofing has been a big part of that and a big booster of southern Utah athletics. We welcome in Poppi for another edition of Tailgate Tour. We're doing the 5 most significant games he's been to. He's been to over 125 of the college football stadiums, not just going and taking a picture outside of it, Larry. He goes into the stadium and watches the game. If it's a MAC game, he usually leaves in the third quarter. But for the most part, he's there the whole time. How's it going, Poppi?
Great. How are you? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound good. Before we get into this list, let's talk about your future plans over the next couple of weeks, some of the games you're going to go to.
Oh, yeah, I got some big ones. We leave tomorrow morning to go to Atlanta, and then we're going to drive over to Mississippi to watch Ole Miss play somebody. I think they may be playing Kentucky. And then we come back to Atlanta, and we watch Kennesaw State. A good friend of ours went to school there. She's going to be there with us to show us around the campus. And then Saturday is Georgia. Georgia's playing a home game in Athens, so we're going to be there over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, fantastic. So, yeah, you still got some good ones on the docket with some SEC schools, and it's not all Sun Belt and stuff like that. You still got some big ones left over.
Right.
All right, so we've got a top 5 list. Do we have any business to take care of before we jump in here, Poppi?
No, I guess just the caveat would be when we talk about significant college games, the criteria I would use is, was it significant to the university or the school, or was it significant to me? Either way, that gives me some wiggle room so I can come up with about any reason to put some team on the list.
Okay, fantastic. Most significant games, he's been to hundreds of them. Let's start with number 5.
Number 5.
Okay, number 5 was November of 1972 at Romney Stadium. I know they've got a different name for it now, but it's at Utah State, Romney Stadium, Utah at Utah State. And that was my first Division I college game that I went to. My older brother wanted to go, and he had tickets. I think it was around Thanksgiving, and it was a big in-state game. And we watched touchdown Tony Adams set an NCAA record for Division I college basketball. He threw for 561 yards, 5 touchdowns, and the Aggies beat Utah 44-16.
Holy
so
cow.
it was quite a game. Me and my two of my 3 brothers at Utah State.
Wow. And was that a huge upset, or it wasn't a huge upset back then?
It wasn't. Utah State was really good back in those days. And so they would be very competitive back and forth. I needed to look at the stats, but I think back in those days, Utah State and Utah traded wins every other year. Utah was not particularly good in those days, as you may recall. So it was a good in-state game.
All right, good for the Aggies. That's great. All right, let's go to number 4.
Number 4.
Okay, as I sometimes do, I'm going to fudge a little bit on number 4. I've got a 4A and a 4B.
Mm-hmm.
4A is October of 2006, Hanson Stadium right there in St. George, Dixie State versus Mesa State, and that was their first year as a 4-year school. They had been very successful as a junior college, but they made the jump under Coach Ron Hahn in 2006 to go 4 years to Division II. And so that was their first win, and I think they only got one win that whole year. They beat Mesa State 21-6. and one of your brothers was on the team that year, so that was a big deal for us to see, and for Dixie to break into the win column. So 4B is a few years later, August 27th, 2009, the same stadium, Dixie State versus Adams State. That was the first game of the season, and your brother Judd was finally the quarterback. He played tight end for 3 years before that, and finally got his chance to play quarterback. And so we were out there. He threw for 330 yards and 4 touchdowns, and they beat Adams State 22 or 38-22. It was a huge victory for Dixie and for Judd, and it really started the season off great.
Fantastic. And there's some bona fides for somebody we have coming up next, our quarterback U expert, Judd, JBT. He can evaluate all these Region 9 quarterbacks because of games like that. So it's kind of a family affair today. Let's go to number 3, Poppi.
Number 3.
Okay, number 3 is November 19th, 1988, Rice Stadium. Utah's quarterback was Scott Mitchell, and they were playing BYU that had been pretty good for a number of years. In fact, Utah had only won one game between BYU and Utah in the previous 15 years. So yes. Utah was kind of used to getting their butts kicked by BYU back in the 80s. But Jim Fossil was the coach at Utah, and BYU showed up there, and I was actually a reporter for the Associated Press, so I was not watching as a spectator. I was reporting on the game. And Scott Mitchell got out and was throwing touchdowns. It was 21-0 in the end of the first quarter. They ended up winning 57-28, a huge upset, surprise game, and it really began to turn the tide for Utah to be able to start getting some players and become a better program. So November 1988, Utah over BYU.
Larry, we need you to dig up the archival article that Poppi wrote after that game. That would be something to look at. Yeah, that's an incredible historic game for the Utes with Scotty Mitchell. All right, was that number 2?
That was number 3.
That was number 3. All right.
Yeah, I did 2 for number 4. So now we got number 2 coming up.
Okay, here we go.
Number 2.
All right, people are going to remember this one. I was present for this. Again, I was on official business. I was taking video for this guy in our ward named Smith who took a bunch of kids to the Holiday Bowl. December 21st, 1984, Jack Murphy Stadium. Michigan from the Big Ten was playing an undefeated BYU. And so I was there with my video camera on the sideline filming this game. And, of course, BYU with a late touchdown, Robbie Bosco to Kelly Smith with 1:23 left. And BYU ended up clinching the national championship by beating mighty Michigan from the Big Ten, 24-17. A huge game to see in person and a huge game for the BYU program.
Wow. I'm amazed that that's not number 1. And by the way, Kelly, if you're listening right now, text us in, and we love hearing about Kelly Smith, who's been a long-time listener of the program. All right, let's go to number 1, Poppi.
Okay, number 1 is kind of a homer game. I probably stepped on your intro. Number 1 is kind of my personal biggest game because it's October 7th, 1967. Wildcat Stadium, home of the Weber State College Wildcats. And they were playing Cal State, L.A. And Weber was, a fine little program, 4-year school. And in 1967, I took your mother, Marilyn Thompson, or Marilyn Ellis at the time, our first date of the modern era. And she was very impressed with my material. And so that began a long courtship that continues to this day. So how could I put anything over that? That's number 1 forever.
Okay, wow. Now I understand how you didn't put BYU number 1 with Grammy going on your first date to a Weber State game. Incredible. That is a fantastic, very prestigious list of historic events, and most of them with Utah ties, right? Almost all of them. Dixie, Weber, BYU, and Utah all represented. I was going to ask you what you think about Utah State leaving the Mountain West to go to the Pac-12.
Yeah, I'm just glad they got someplace to go. I mean, the Mountain West was kind of crumbling under their feet, and if they had been left out of this, they'd go back to being independent or something, or for being in a smaller conference. So I think it's great that Utah State has a place to go, and I think it's good for the Pac-12 or the Pac whatever the number is going to be to have a Utah school. So I think that gives you lots of good viewers, and Utah State will be representative there, and they can continue to compete. So I'm really glad that they found that, and then that's going to be good for football in the state of Utah.
All right, I agree with that. I'm excited for the Aggies as well. All right, that's Poppi's Tailgate Tour. You hear it every Thursday at 5:15. We do a top 5 list. He's on a journey to watch a game in all, however many there are, 150-something now, Division I football stadiums, and he's got a couple of SEC schools over the next couple of weeks that I'm sure we'll be talking about after he goes there next Thursday. Thanks, Poppi.
You bet. Good to be on.
Quick break. Back with more right after this on the Andy Thompson Show with the rest.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.